When I am dead, what will happen? What will I feel? Will I still be myself? Will I still be who I am now? Will the emotions that propelled me in life continue to do so? Is there a heaven or a hell? Will I be greeted by gods or demons, enemies or beloved ones? And will I remember those who are dear to me now? First of all, let us consider the facts. Life is a state of becoming, and death is a part of this process. The death, say, of physical tissue is merely a part of the process of life as you know it in your system, a part of the process of becoming. The ideas that you have involving the nature of reality will strongly color your experiences following death, for you will interpret them in the light of your beliefs, even as now you interpret daily life according to your ideas of what is possible or not possible. Following death, your consciousness may withdraw from your body slowly or quickly, according to many variables. In many cases of senility, for example, the strongly organized portions of personality have already left the body and are meeting the new circumstances. The fear of death itself can cause such a psychological panic that out of a sense of self-preservation and defense you lower your consciousness so that you are in a state of coma, and you may take some time to recover. A belief in hellfires can cause you to hallucinate Hades conditions. A belief in a stereotyped heaven can result in a hallucination of heavenly conditions. Such hallucinations, I can assure you, are temporary. There are teachers to explain the condition and circumstances. You are not left alone, therefore, lost in mazes of hallucination. You always form your own reality according to your ideas and expectations. This is the nature of consciousness in whatever reality it finds itself. You may or may not realize immediately that you are dead in physical terms. You will find yourself in another form, an image that will appear physical to you to a large degree. If you firmly believe that your consciousness is a product of your physical body, then you may attempt to cling to it. Those of you who had faith in life after death will find it much easier to accustom yourself to the new conditions. The after death are generally far more intense and joyful than the reality you know now. You will simply be learning to operate in a new environment in which different conditions apply, which are far less limiting than the physical ones with which you now operate. In other words, you must learn to understand and use new freedoms. Even these experiences will vary, however. Many will continue into other physical lives. Some will exist and develop their abilities in different systems of reality altogether, and so for a time will remain in this intermediary state. Now, you may or may not be greeted by friends or relatives immediately following death. This is a personal matter, as always. Overall, you may be far more interested in people that you have known in other lives than those close to you in the present one, for example. Telepathy operates without distortion in the after-death period, so you must deal with the true relationships that exist between yourself and all relatives and friends who await you. Your own motives will be crystal clear. You will react to this clearness, however, in your own way. And you will examine the fabric of the existence you have left, and you learn to understand how your experiences were the result of your own thoughts and emotions. Until this examination is through, you are not yet aware of the larger portion of your own identity. When you realize the significance and meaning of the life you have just left, then you are ready for conscious knowledge of your other existences. You become aware then of an expanded awareness, and you begin to make plans for your next existence. You can enter another level of reality and then return to a physical existence if you choose. Your consciousness, as you think of it, may of course leave your body entirely before physical death. Your consciousness leaves the physical organism in various ways according to the conditions. In some cases, the organism itself is still able to function to some degree. There may or may not be disorientation on your part according to your beliefs and development. I do not necessarily mean intellectual development. The intellect should go hand in hand with the emotions and intuitions, but if it pulls against these too strongly, difficulties can arise when the newly freed consciousness seizes upon its ideas about reality after death, rather than facing the particular reality in which it finds itself. It can deny feeling, in other words, and even attempt to argue itself out of its present independence from the body. An individual can be so certain that death is the end of all that oblivion, though temporary, results. In many cases, immediately on leaving the body, there is, of course, amazement and recognition of the situation. The body itself may be viewed, for example, and many funerals have a guest of honor amidst the company, and no one gazes into the face of the corpse with as much curiosity and wonder. At this point, many variations in behavior emerge, each the result of individual background, knowledge, and habit. The surroundings in which the dead find themselves will often vary. Vivid hallucinations may form experience quite as real as any in mortal life. Now, I have told you that thoughts and emotions form physical reality, and they form after-death experience. This does not mean that the experiences are not valid any more than it means that physical life is not valid. Christianity has believed in a heaven and a hell, a purgatory and reckoning, and so at death, to those who so believe in these symbols, a ceremony is enacted, and the guides take on the guises of those beloved figures of Christian saints and heroes. Then within this as a framework, and in terms that they can understand, such individuals are told the true situation. When life after death is completely denied, the problem is somewhat magnified. Many, of course, are overjoyed to find themselves still conscious. Others have to learn all over again about certain laws of behavior, for they do not realize the creative potency of their thoughts or emotions. Such an individual may find himself in 10 different environments within the flicker of an eyelash, for example, with no idea of the reason behind the situation. He will see no continuity at all, and feel himself flung without rhyme or reason from one experience to another, never realizing that his own thoughts are propelling him quite literally. I am speaking now of the events immediately following death, for there are other stages. Guides will helpfully become a part of your hallucinations in order to help you out of them, but they must first of all get your trust. At one time, in your terms, I myself acted as such a guide. The situation is rather tricky from the guide's viewpoint, for psychologically utmost discretion must be used. One man's Moses, as I discovered, may not be another man's Moses. I have served as a rather credible Moses on several occasions, and once, though this is hard to believe, to an Arab. The Arab was a very interesting character, by the way, and to illustrate some of the difficulties involved, I will tell you about him. He hated the Jews, but somehow he was obsessed with the idea that Moses was more powerful than Allah, and for years this was the secret sin upon his conscience. He spent some time in Constantinople at the time of the Crusades. He was captured and ended up with a group of Turks, all to be executed by the Christians, in this case very horribly so. They forced his mouth open and stuffed it with burning coals as a starter. He cried to Allah, and then in greater desperation to Moses, and as his consciousness left his body, Moses was there. He believed in Moses more than he did Allah, and I did not know until the last moment which form I was to assume. Moses and Allah were to fight for him. He cannot rid himself of the idea of force, though he had died by force, and nothing could persuade him to accept any kind of peace or contentment or any rest until some kind of battle was wrought. A friend and I, with some others, staged the ceremony, and from opposite clouds in the sky, Allah and I shouted out our claims upon his soul, while he, the poor man, cowered on the ground between us. Now, while I tell this story humorously, you must understand that the man's belief brought it about, and so to set him free, we worked it through. I called upon Jehovah, but to no avail, because our Arab did not know of Jehovah, only of Moses, and it was in Moses he put his faith. Allah drew a cosmic sword, and I set it afire so that he dropped it. It fell to the ground and set the land aflame. Our Arab cried out again. He saw leagues of followers behind Allah, and so leagues of followers appeared behind me. Our friend was convinced that one of the three of us must be destroyed, and he feared mightily that he would be the victim. Finally, the opposing clouds in which we appeared came closer. In my hand I held a tablet and said, "Thou shalt not kill." Allah beheld a sword, and as we came closer, we exchanged these items, and our followers merged. We came together, forming the image of a sun, and we said, "We are one." The two diametrically opposed ideas had to merge, or the man would have no peace, and only when these opposites were united could we begin his explanation. Now, to be such a guide requires great discipline and training. It is possible, for example, to lose yourself momentarily in the hallucinations that are being formed, and in such cases another teacher must bail you out. And the variety of hallucinations in which you may become involved is endless. You may, for example, take the form of an individual's dearly beloved dead pet. All of these hallucinatory activities take place usually some short time immediately following death. Some individuals are fully aware of their circumstances, however, because of previous training and development, and they are ready after arrest if they desire to progress to other stages. They may, for example, become aware of their own reincarnational selves, recognizing quite readily personalities they knew in other lives, if those personalities are not otherwise engaged. They may deliberately now hallucinate, or they may relive certain portions of other lives if they choose. Then there is a period of self-examination. Any given individual may experience any of these stages, you see. Except for the self-examination, many may be sidestepped entirely. Since the emotions are so important, it is of great benefit if friends are waiting for you. In many instances, however, these friends have progressed to other stages of activity, and often a guide will take the guise of a friend for a while, so that you will feel more confident. Now, it should be obvious from what I have said so far, but that each experience is different. Generally speaking, however, there are dimensions into which these individual experiences will fall. For example, there is an initial stage for those who are still focused strongly in physical reality, and for those who need a period of recuperation and rest. On this level, there will be hospitals and rest homes. The patients do not yet realize that there is nothing wrong with them at all. In some cases, the idea of illness is so strong that they have built their earthly years about this psychological center. They project ill conditions upon the new body as they did upon the old one. They are given various kinds of treatments of a psychic nature, and told that the condition of that body is being brought about by the nature of their own beliefs. Now, many individuals do not need to pass through this particular period. It goes without saying that the hospitals and training centers are not physical in your terms. Now, you may call this mass hallucination, if you will. Fact is that to those encountering that reality, the events are quite real. There are also training centers. In these, the nature of reality is explained in accordance with an individual's ability to understand and perceive it. The familiar parables for some will still be used, at least initially, and then these individuals will gradually be weaned away from them. In these centers, there are certain classes in which instruction is given for the benefit of those who chose to return to the physical environment. They are taught, in other words, the methods that allow them to translate emotion and thought into physical actuality. There is no time lag, as there must be in the three-dimensional system, between the initiation of such thoughts and their materialization. All of this occurs more or less at one level, though you must understand that I am simplifying the issues here to some extent. For example, some individuals do not undergo any such periods, but because of development and progress during their other lives, they are ready to begin more ambitious programs. You may, after death, utterly refuse to believe that you are dead, and continue to focus your emotional energy toward those you have known in life. If you have been obsessed with a particular project, for example, you may try to complete it. There are always guides to help you understand your situation, but you may be so engrossed that you pay them no heed. Suffice it to say that large fields of emotional focus toward physical reality can hold you back from further development. It is possible for an individual who has died to completely misinterpret the experience and attempt to re-enter the corpse. This can happen when the personality identified himself almost exclusively with the physical image. It is not common, but nevertheless, under various circumstances, such individuals will attempt to reactivate the physical mechanism, becoming more panic-stricken when they discover the body's condition. Those who have not identified their consciousness with the body completely find it much easier to leave it, All of these circumstances then may or may not occur according to the individual involved. However, after leaving the physical body, you will immediately find yourself in another body. This is the same kind of form in which you travel in out-of-body projections. This form will seem physical. It will not be seen by those still in the physical body, however, generally speaking. It can do anything that you do now in your dreams. Therefore, it flies, goes through solid objects, and is moved directly by your will, taking you, say, from one location to another as you may think of these locations. If you wonder what Aunt Sally is doing, say, in Poughkeepsie, New York, then you will find yourself there. However, you cannot, as a rule, manipulate physical objects. You cannot pick up a lamp or throw a dish. Following death, it will be the only body you are aware of for some time. Much later, and on many levels, you will finally learn to take many forms as you choose, consciously. You may find that when you imagine yourself as a child after death, then you suddenly have the form of a child that you were. You may die at 80 and after death think of the youth and vitality that you had at 20, and find then that your form changes to correspond with the inner image. Most individuals after death choose a more mature image that usually corresponds to the peak physical abilities, regardless of the age when the physical peak was reached. Others choose instead to take the form they had at a particular point when the greatest mental or emotional heights were achieved, regardless of the beauty or age that characterized the form. You will feel comfortable with the form that you choose, therefore, and you will usually use it when you want to communicate with others you have known, though for such communications with the living, you may instead adopt the form you had when you were known to the individuals you want to contact. These after-death environments do not exist necessarily on other planets. They do not take up space, so the question is, where does all this happen? Your entire concept of space is so distorted that any true explanation is highly difficult. There is no one place, no specific location. After death, you may find yourself in a training center. Now, theoretically, this center could be in the middle of your present living room in physical space, but the distance between you and the members of your family still living, sitting perhaps, thinking of you or reading a paper, would have nothing to do with space as you know it.